Because a Bay former Leader class figure is so complex, and knowing how my video reviews for CollectionDX usually operate, I'm going to be breaking this review down into two separate videos. While one video will be detailing the individual modes and the features contained within each, the other video will detail exclusively the transformation process from robot mode into vehicle mode. Okay, let's be honest. Transformers and Transformers Revenge of the Fallen are not exactly known for their character development traits. Yeah, there are plenty of characters in them, and they do a lot of interesting things, sometimes not so interesting things, but you hardly get any one-on-one time with any of these bots. And this applies to both Autobots and Decepticons. Usually, unfortunately, the Bayformers movies have focused more on the human perspective. Besides, it costs a load of money to animate these things, you know? That does not come cheap. And this certainly applies to the character of Autobot Ironhide, who is Optimus Prime's weapons specialist, whatever that means, who's a wizened old bot who's fought in thousands of battles since time immemorial. Which sounds kind of like the profile of every single Autobot and Decepticon who's ever been created by Hasbro and Takara. But regardless of all that, I'm not here to talk about a movie, I'm here to talk about a toy. Specifically, the highly and much anticipated Leader-class Autobot Ironhide. Aside from the obvious differences of their physical size and how they transform, I'm going to do the best that I can not to compare Leader-class Ironhide with its predecessor Voyager-class versions. But one thing that I don't really need to compare is the awesome level of Bayformer detailing that we get. Even on the face, the eyes are much more detailed than anything else we've had previously. You notice there's a little bit of intentional asymmetry of the crest right here, a little scar that goes across his right eye. Is it left eye? Yeah, it's his right eye. There's a slight variation. It looks like the plastic is warped a little bit, but trust me, it's an intentional thing. Anyways, the level of detail, little things like the gears up here, the position of the wheels, like the Voyager class toy, the wheels were originally inside the torso. You also had those huge doors from the GMC top kick were just hanging out the backside. Well, now the doors are hanging out back here. Sorry, I'm doing comparisons. I don't mean to. But anyways, the level of detail is just fantastic. These black panels here have actually been painted. Not much under there. One thing that I do like about this version of the toy is that it actually decided what it's going to do with the kibble on its back. I mean, you had all kinds of weird panels sticking out. There never was any clear instruction for where and how they're supposed to fit. This version solves that problem. Of course, the arms, very nicely detailed. And he still has those knuckle thingies right there. Micro missiles that are not micro missiles, I suppose. Level of detail on the legs, though, I gotta keep going on about that. It's still pretty sweet. So yeah, detail on Leader-class Ironhide passes muster. Now how about the rest of them? Please bear with me. I know this is going to take a minute or so, but I need to get this out right. One of the things that makes any Leader-class transforming figure so appealing is not just its physical size, but all of the posability and the complex transformations and all the gimmickry, and it's supposed to be the best of that particular year's lineup. So you can only imagine my surprise when I found out that a Leader-class figure did not have a head that turns side to side. It just could not turn. I was stunned. Absolutely stunned. In my final draft of the text and picture review for CollectionDX.com, it was actually Prometheum 5, our, I can't really say editor-in-chief because that's Adam's job, But anyways, Prometheum 5, who does us the great courtesy of scanning for spelling and grammar, which is why all our stuff looks really nice nowadays, he noticed my little mini rant about how it is the neck could not turn. And he pointed this out to me and he said, Ava, I've been seeing other reviews where people are able to turn the neck just fine. What's going on over here? Knowing he's a trustworthy person, I double-checked. Sure enough, other video reviews on YouTube.com, I won't say which ones, had the neck turning on Leader-class Ironhide. So, what's going on here? This doesn't make any sense. And so what I ended up doing, and I would not advise you doing this at home, boys and girls, especially boys, is I unscrewed that single screw back there, and there's a single LED and some wiring and obviously the mechanism for the mouth plate, which I'll be getting into later. And it actually took a magnifying glass, because this is really close quarters in here, by the way, and I found out the neck had been glued into place. Now, even though this was sold at Costco a couple of weeks before it came out at Toys R Us, Target, Walmart, blah, 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 why would the early exclusive release of Leader-class Ironhide have glue when all the other reviewers on YouTube, theirs was just fine? I didn't get it. So very carefully, I actually used a little knife and I chipped away at a little bit of the glue there, and then I finally wrenched on the neck tight enough to actually break his neck. And then finally, after putting the whole thing back together, I got his neck to turn side to side. Now, there's a disadvantage to this, and this isn't really part of the Mechtech feature, which I'll get into a little bit later, but like all other Leader-class figures, he does have a light and sound function in him. See this lever back here behind his head? When you push up, you get this. And now he does actually have a faceplate in the movies. It's just not immediately noticeable just because of the cinematography that they use in the movies. I won't talk about that here. Anyways, yeah. And I think that the reason they glued it in place is because, believe it or not, the head is actually pushed forward oh so slightly here. It's like pushed forward like a hair right now. Because when I push back on it, it just pops right back up. But if I push forward a little, oops. Yes, we know your name. Thank you very much. When I push forward on the head, that thing stays down. And it's kind of the same when you turn his head side to side. So that's the reason why I think, and this may not be a Costco exclusive because I've only handled one that I got from Costco. But yeah, I think that's the reason why that was glued into place. Or it's possible it was a manufacturing error. I've never heard of anybody else with this kind of problem before. So maybe it is just mine. I don't know. All I know is that after I unglued the neck, while it may be able to turn side to side now, and I can cheat by having that down, the original function of this button right here no longer works for some reason. I don't think that I broke any of the wiring in there, but just know that that button also is supposed to activate the light and sound at the same time that it moves that lever and puts the faceplate down. So, there's that. Which took 5 minutes too many to explain all of that. And now for the rest of the articulation of the figure beyond just the neck. Got to swivel out. And it's actually pretty complicated. You've got 1, 2, 3 elbow joints. It's kind of weird, and it actually is a little complicated to actually be able to hang on to things in here. But you've got, okay, let's see how I do this. You've actually got 2 swivel joints in the elbow. So you've got the standard elbow. You've got this, which could be considered a wrist joint. And then you've got the other wrist joint, which is right here and lets you do this. It's a little tricky to do because even though this kind of bulky shoulder armor placement stuff here, even though this is screen accurate, it's supposed to look like this, it totally gets in the way of the shoulder. So unfortunately what happens is the arms will never, ever, ever hang forward, perfectly forward. They'll always be tilted at an angle. It also makes getting in here a little difficult because that upper arm is a little on the small side. So, not, you got screen accuracy, but unfortunately you lost a little bit of this. Like I mentioned earlier, the wheels were actually inside the torso in the Voyager class version, and technically these should be in a little further, but because of the Mechtech that's sitting in here, that makes it kind of difficult to get those wheels in there. Leg articulation is also rather frustrating. Unfortunately, you also cannot get the legs to go straight forward because you can see here the wheels actually overlap. And so his feet have a slight tilt inwards, so his legs will always be splayed like this. You can never put them one in front of the other. You just can't do it. But that's not the frustrating part. The frustrating part is, after I demonstrate the hips, very tight, very nice. No waist articulation, by the way. Yeah, so there's that. Here's the frustrating part, though. Standard for, since Beast Wars Transformers in '96, the standard has been knees that rotate 90 degrees, okay? Well, here's the unfortunate part. That's it. That is all the articulation you get going forward or backwards in the knees. One ratchet position. That's not even 30 degrees. The other side is a little different because of how the panel opens up here, which I'll get to later. But you actually can cheat a little more with the left leg. And then you also have the traditional swivel side to side. But really, I guess so. And then because of transformation, that like I mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of tilting side to side, and his toes are articulated. Not sure why, but they do. So that's it for articulation on Leader-class Ironhide. For each of the live-action Transformers films, the toy lines that were associated had a unifying gimmick connected to them. With Bayformers 1, it was automorph technology, where something would transform via springs or gears or levers or whatever on the inside as you transforming it, and then a different section would move all by itself. With the Revenge of the Fallen line, it was Mech Alive, where after you got it into robot mode, you would move a certain part of their body, and then a little piece of armor, internal gearing or something like that, would spin around or open up and close, and it was pretty realistic in some cases to what you saw on the screen. And because Dark of the Moon is being promoted as a full-on war movie, this time around we're getting the deceptively named Mechtech gimmick. And what this is from Scout class to Leader class, each fully transformable figure has a specialized weapon system that can transform on its own, whether it's attaching it and it pops out, or there's a spring-loaded action on it. Sometimes it's a spring-powered projectile, sometimes it's a cannon that transforms into a claw, blah, 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 etc., etc. And so Leader class Ironhide is certainly no different. You pull up on the smokestack over here, and you get one of the two cannons that we have seen him previously with. It's, obviously it's real tiny compared to how it should be, but, yeah, and you just pull back on the smokestack right here. And that's it. And it doesn't turn on its own, and it does not disconnect. Of course, he had two of them, so you got to pull up on the other side, and there's the other one. Now, one of the problems with the left side... One of the problems with the left side is that this panel here is really loose and does not lock into place. So that's a common complaint with everybody, which actually I share. Now, this gun did not look like this in the first two movies. This one did, but it's obviously much too small. Now we're getting into stuff that might be showing up in Dark of the Moon. I don't know because, well, actually nobody knows because the movie hasn't come out yet. There's this peg up here, which handles the mouth sound effects there, and then there's this second lever right here. You push down on it and you get that. Pretty awesome. Want to see it again? So you can actually trick it. I don't know if he does that in the movie, but goddamn, that is a neat feature. Here's the interesting part, though. This panel down here actually activates as a second trigger. Watch. See? I don't know why it does that. And also, when you grab onto this thing, which is actually much more convenient than hanging out up here, this lever moves as well. And unfortunately, you cannot lock that open. That's a bit of a bummer. Now here is the reason why it is that the legs transform in such a simple way, but I don't think this is a good enough reason for why the knees were so limited in articulation. See this panel over here? Wait, what panel? Well, this panel, you open it up and reveals a little missile launcher, which you can actually remove. Set that down for a moment, show you the interior details a little better. It's nice that they actually put details in there. I think you can see them much better from this side. Anyways, close it up. And then every Mechtech weapon has this little peg on it right here. Just looks like a common peg to me. With Leader-class Ironhide, you can peg it either into his hands, either hand, or there is a hole here and a hole here. You could just set it in there, just like that. Oops. Seems I already triggered it. And that actually has a very good range on it. I don't know if he does that in the movie. I doubt he does that in the movie. It'll be interesting if he does. But yeah, that's pretty... that's a nice little touch. Obviously, I wish it was, like this cannon was sitting up here, but, no complaints. Of course, what you have to do to the one side, you have to do to the other. So there's another cannon here, right? Wrong. There's actually this, what do you call this, K-bar style knife? Whatever it is, don't drop it, please. Which can fit into either hand. Or if you want to do it Warhammer 40,000 style, you can stick it up there. So that is it for Mechtech on Leader-class Ironhide. Now obviously the GMC Top Kick is not exactly an elaborate type of vehicle, even though it is pretty frickin' big. So I can't really say that Leader-class Ironhide's vehicle mode is gorgeous, because it's always been, just plain black with, a little bit of silver gray and transparent blue up here as opposed to clear windows, clear headlights and clear fog lights, although the headlights and fog lights are supposed to also be blue, by the way, just like they were in all three movies. There's a couple of little panel lines, no big deal. Make sure that you absolutely include those trademark marks, especially there, twice, road armor and road armor, a bit eccentric that. And I love, this has always been a subtle detail I've always enjoyed about Ironhide, is you don't notice it if you don't know it's there. It's just kind of perfectly blended in. You're not really supposed to notice it, but there it is. I've always loved that detail. Of course, the big problem with Leader-class Ironhide, unlike his Voyager counterpart, sorry to make the comparison, is that he has a hell of a lot of undercarriage kibble. Can a truck this big have undercarriage? I guess so. Yeah, this is kind of a bit of an issue. Obviously the Top Kick sits up pretty high compared to most Transformers vehicle modes, but yeah, that's pretty bad. Oh Jesus, that's pretty bad right there. So yeah, because I mean pretty much all that Ironhide is doing is laying down on his stomach, and then his arms sit up here. That's pretty much all it is, and then his legs flip around. Again with the simplistic transformation from the other video. As you probably already... No, I'll do that later. subtle little button back here. You push it once, you get this. Visible head. And of course, because I forgot to mention it earlier, the speaker actually located behind that cannon barrel, which is awesome. That's where the sound is supposed to be coming from. So what happens if you hold it down? This is what happens. That's what happens when you hold it down. And as long as you're holding it down, that sound will keep playing. It'll just cycle over and over and over. Which actually sounds a lot more like an animal roaring and growling than it does a 4x4 big heavy truck. Obviously, in robot mode, you would pull on the back of the smokestacks, the cannons would open up. Well, yes, because of Mechtech, you can very much do that in vehicle mode as well. And this applies to all Mechtech-equipped transformable figures. No sound effects with that, but nice enough. And as always, panel on the top refuses to hold in place. And that's it. Oh, by the way, before I forget, you can still activate that in vehicle mode. Why? I don't know. Oh, I know why, because it's not a smart toy. And that's it. Before I proceed with the typical commentary and opinions that usually happen at the end of my videos, I must convey my sincerest apologies for my performance in this video. It's going to be completely irrelevant, and it's totally off topic right now, and always will be, but I've been preparing for my younger sister's wedding for the last 6 months, and it's going to come to a head in a couple of weeks here, and I've just become physically and emotionally drained by it. So I've been forcing myself to find some time somewhere in order to get this video review done before Dark of the Moon hits theaters in July 1st. And as a result of working my ass off on something that will be totally trivial by the time the next video comes out, and because of this, I regrettably do not have the typical energy and stamina and creative juices necessary to shoot one of these videos. So I sincerely apologize if it has affected the end result of this video review. However, please do not confuse my lack of stamina in shooting this video for a lack of interest in this toy. It is a very interesting toy, even if I do have some bics about it. As is certainly the case with many of the toys in my collection. I am indeed very pleased with this toy. It's not the best that we could have hoped for, but hey, at least we got it. As usual, I'll start out with the good stuff first. The good stuff is, well, first of all, pretty much I love everything from the waist up. Everything from the waist up is pretty good. Yeah, any Leader-class figure that includes a battery compartment and light and sound function is going to have a bit of a blocky torso. That usually hinders transformation and even the light and sound function of it, whatever mechanical feature they seem to include in it these days. But for the most part, not bad. It's unfortunate that the blasters are not as big as I would have liked them to be, but I found that the Mechtech weapons were a nice touch regardless of how big they were. And although it was not required, I thought it was a nice little choice to put the missile launcher up here, and even to have these Mechtech weaponry slots up here available for any other set that you happen to get beyond this one. The level of surface details and obviously the Bayformer aesthetic is very much intact here and very wonderful as always. As you're all aware, I'm a big proponent of the visual appearance of Bayformers, even if I disagree with how they are portrayed as characters in the movies. And as a result of the excellent, as usual, sculpting details that they put into this figure, Ironhide is much more screen accurate than his original Voyager-class counterpart, most notably in eliminating the doors up here. And something that actually a lot of people have complained about, but that I actually liked, is that his forearms are much bulkier, much bulkier, because, you know, the original ones were just thin. I don't know what you could call. His arms are actually thin, but then he had the cannons sitting on the outside. Now, his forearms, on the other hand, they are supposed to be a little bit bigger. They are supposed to be a little bit chunkier, even with the cannons attached to it. So, even though it's kibble, and even though it certainly doesn't look all that accurate, I do like that his forearms have a bit of bulk to them now. That really is, that's actually something that I like in Leader-class Ironhide. And that certainly applies to both sides. Yeah, this panel is a little annoying over here, and yeah, this gun doesn't look right, but I like that he has the bigger proportioned forearms. That's what he's supposed to have. Yeah, the upper arms, not so much, but I'll certainly give it a pass. And also how the wheels are now put into their proper places. And of course that certainly applies to the legs as well. And so now, regardless of whatever my quips may be about this toy, I do like it. It really is good to, not just that it's good to have it, but it visually is closer than what we've had with the Voyager-class toys up to this point. And even the revamped Voyager and brand new Deluxe that we're getting for Dark of the Moon. Actually quite skinny compared to how he appears in the movie. I know that's a common complaint with Bayformers toys, but in this case it's a little more obvious than usual that the proportions don't match on certainly the Deluxe and new Voyager class. As far as Mechtech is concerned, all the Leader class figures were confirmed beforehand to not have detachable weapons. I know I already spoke about this, and technically this is Mechtech even though it's just a puny little missile launcher or whatever. But I guess you had to have the little missile launcher just because, you know, this and this and this don't actually shoot anything. I love how this thing has a, not only does the cannon pop out, but it spins a little bit, and it has an LED for when it's firing. I don't think I've ever seen that in a modern Transformers toy after '96. You know, they had it for G2 with a couple of figures, you know, the what were those things called? The light cruisers or whatever they were called. I can't remember what they're called. They had little LEDs built into them that would shine through the swords or through the blasters. We haven't really had anything quite like that since. So, you know, props to Hasbro and Takara for giving us that. And for making it concealable. That was great. You totally don't know it's there unless you pull the trigger. Which is up here and actually rather painful to hold down for long periods of time. And the knife is appropriately badass. Certainly the way it folds up and deploys, that's cool. Yeah, the little missile launcher, not that great in how you put it away, but pulling it out, it's a proper treat that it reorients itself forward, so you could just reach back and poof. So, nice. And now, because I've had to wait 2 minutes for yet another Boeing 777 to pass overhead, I've completely blanked out on what I was going to say next. So now I'll move on to the negative stuff. I don't know if you can really call them Mechtech, but while I like having the knife and the little missile launcher deploy in interesting little ways, what I do not like is how it adversely affected primarily the posability in the knees. That is just the strangest thing I've ever seen. Now, having bulky torso just because it has light and sound and a pop-out weapon, that doesn't bother me so much. That's kind of expected. That's kind of unavoidable to a degree as well, regardless of if you use AA batteries or AAA batteries or even LR44s. But I really don't like how it restricts the knees on this thing. It's just, I don't understand the reasoning that Hasbro and Takara had when they made this toy. There is plenty of space here, and I don't think that by imitating the appearance of his knees in the movies, that was a good enough excuse for limiting the movement. I mean, I can open up this panel over here slightly, you know, just open it up a hair or two, and then I get almost full range of motion out of this knee. This one is one click unavoidable, and that's it, because it was sculpted in such a way that it restricts it. Screen accurate, maybe, not that we really get to see his knees clearly very often, but inexcusable as far as a toy is concerned. Especially since this is 2011, and we haven't had non-posable knees since, Scout Class Scattershot in the Transformers Cybertron line of 2006. And then a long time before that, where regular standard procedure was no posable knees. This is just something that has been ingrained into all Transformers toys since '96. And it's so frustrating because, well, first of all, it's a leader-class toy, and then second of all, it's totally inexcusable because it is standard procedure nowadays. Really, really frustrating, that. And as a result of this, he is constantly tilting forward because, you don't get any motion of it. His legs don't even, this is as straight as they will get. This is as bent as they will get. So he is constantly leaning over. And keep in mind, the kibble on his back, which, like I said, it's a little more organized, but I kind of wish it would fold up a little differently, fold away the doors, things like that, blah, 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 blah. But I don't understand what happened there with those knees. That's ridiculous. Absolutely inexcusable. And I also kind of wish that they dealt with, putting the wheels in their proper places, which is actually somewhere up here inside his hips, which prevents his legs from coming together. And I also wish that they had dealt with the panels, at least along the side. Have it fold back so it's got some sort of a weird angle sitting on the back of his heel. Do something like that. That might be unavoidable, but, take this piece on the side and stick it back here if you can. I looked in here real carefully, and there appears to be maybe some sort of joint that they abandoned halfway through development or something in there, because I thought this panel might flip down and reveal something, but it doesn't. So, missed opportunity right there. And speaking of missed opportunity, which I already brought up, yes, I like having the wheels here. I like having his torso stick out a little further because that's screen accurate. But yeah, it's unfortunate those arms can't fold straight forward. That also hurts a bit. Not as bad as the knees, but it does hurt a bit. Even more so than the knees. Maybe from a technical thing, I know I'm going on about the knees, but that is a pretty big problem. But this one is even more of a problem than just the knees. The knees are just kind of frustrating, well, you have to do it with it. But this one is just kind of mind-boggling. Why? I mentioned earlier, I pretty much like everything from the waist up on this toy. But the thing that I'm flabbergasted over is why would you do all the coloring so well up here and then mold his entire legs in blue? I like that particular color of blue. That's great. And they actually did it to satisfying effect on Voyager-class Ironhide from 2007, specifically the premium version. I had to get these two on the screen at the same time sooner or later. I love the coloring on this thing because he's mostly black, as he should be, and then with the premium version in particular, he got some additional metallic blue coloring on him, which is just spectacular. This thing is just amazing, how the level of detail on I should say detail, but the additional use of paint apps on this figure was just top-notch. Well, except for maybe killing the light piping in his eyes, but what are you going to do? And they also use it here. They use it on the cannon here, they use it on the missile launcher, they use it on the cannon over here. That's fine, that's fine. That's part of his color scheme. But his color scheme is not top half black, bottom half metallic blue. Here's the thing I don't get, though. You've got light gray here, you've got standard gray here, you've got painted silver, you've even got painted metallic blue over here. His fist is actually molded in black, but then it's painted. Why did they mold his legs? Why didn't they mold his legs in the dark gray that composes actually a good percentage of the torso, and then paint it black? That I do not get. Why are his legs blue? That's perhaps the biggest turnoff with this toy. Not even lack of articulation in the knees, but that blue is just... Why? I don't get it. And honestly, I'm starting to regret buying this toy just because it was an impulse buy. I got it from Costco for $10 less than MSRP. And it occurred to me after I bought it that maybe I should have waited for the inevitable Takara Tomy Japanese exclusive repaint, which would have been much more accurate. Because, they did it with that movie Masterpiece Starscream from 2010, which was just blew my mind, was amazing. And now I'm kind of regretting buying the US version, much like I did with Leader-class Optimus Prime in 2009 when I found out there was going to be the Japanese exclusive Buster Optimus Prime. But why are his legs blue? And the final thing that bugs me about this toy is the redundancy, specifically in the electronics. To activate his mouth plate, you have a lever back here, and you push the one on his chest. Why is the lever in back there at all? Or, why is this button here and not just use the lever? One or the other. Why do you need two of them? Now, if this is a feature back here of the character himself in the movies, okay. But why does it move? Why, if that's the case, why bother with this button? Huh? Same thing with the Mechtech in his chest. Why put this thing here at all when I actually can work it better from down here? Just pull that lever down and the thing opens up. This thing, I don't care if you're an adult or a kid, it is painful holding. You really got to fight to push this thing down. And it makes no sense. If I was confident enough to get past the wiring and whatever else that's in there, I would totally remove that thing right there. That's just ridiculous. There's no reason for it to be there. I mean, if you're trying to get him to hold it back here so that your hand is not in the way when the chest opens up, okay, but then why put this optional panel down here? Why not have this spring-powered as well? It's the redundancy of the two figures that takes up so much unnecessary space, and I'm sure it does contribute to a bit of hindering a otherwise appropriate transformation process. It makes no sense. I think that the two levers in back are just goof-ups during design or something like that, like they were going to use them and then they changed their mind, or they originally had these and decided, maybe they need something else, so you put them back here, okay? Whatever it is, it's really, really strange and it doesn't make a lot of sense, and clearly something happened during the design phase. But why are his legs blue and then not painted? Why are his knees restrictive when they didn't need to be? I don't get that. Why my shoulders hurt? I would not consider myself a fan of pop rock. As a matter of fact, I try to avoid it wherever possible. That doesn't automatically make me a hater of Linkin Park. It just means I don't listen to their stuff. But the songs for the past 3 Bayformers films, including this one, not bad. Not bad. This is AV Unit 4A for CollectionDX.com, signing off.